original, but from the Home Center Ministerial Team, our Minister of Prayer, Reverend Joe Pinecoffer, has written this prayer to introduce our first Sunday talk. God, beauty is in everything that I behold, everything I do, and in everything I say. I understand I am loved when I give love. I understand I am healed when I give healing to another. It is also a truth that I am forgiven when I forgive. It is the gift from my heart in the emotion of God in love that makes all things possible. I declare in love and light it is so. Amen. And now, Reverend Jay and Dick Walker. This is the Sunday service, the last Sunday of the month, and it's a special service. It'll be Reverend Jay and I talking about spiritual things, and today's episode is about our guides and our interface with our guides. Guides are in the spiritual realm. They're here to help us, and this particular service, you're going to find out that you probably are a guide, as a matter of fact. I'll turn it over to Jay, and we'll just get into our speech.
Okay. Start out. Defining.
All right. The guides are an entity that is in the fourth dimension, invisible to us normally. You can hear them talking to you in your head, as you talk back and forth. Now, I first became aware of those type of entities when I was probably 3 or 4 years old. Didn't give a second thought about it. It was normal throughout my life, all the way to the time in 2015 when I took the Star Power class here. And I suddenly opened up to a different knowledge of what guides are. A guide will be matched to your DNA line with the vibration of the DNA line, and it'll be a person or a position that you'll put a question out to. This is what we've been operating under up till probably in the early 2000s. You put a question out to, they'll find a person in your line that needs that knowledge, team you up, and you'll solve the issue, whatever the issue is. And Reverend Jay will give you some specific examples of that in a bit. Early in the 2010-2015 time frame, we made a change here on Earth as we started to go from the Pisces to the Aquarian age. Suddenly, we have the ability, if we put the effort into it, to clear our karma. If you clear your karma and you get that truckload off of you, then suddenly you can become a guide and still be in the third dimension. You don't have to basically translate or die into the fourth dimension. You're a guide. We took a vow of wiping our memory when we came in of the past things, but when you turn loose of the karma, that allows more direct communications with your Akashic record, and that allows you then to become a guide as well as a regular human being here. So at this point in time, if you drop your karma, it doesn't go away, it's just out of the way. We will have communications with what we would think is our future selves. That self will come back and say, I have a problem, and this is what I'm working on. And we won't hear it that way. We'll just feel I've got to find this piece of information, or I've got to figure out how you build these kind of devices. And as you delve into that, you're opening up your memory. You've already done this. You're opening up your memory connection with the future and telling them how we've done these things in the past so they can recreate it in the future and even out the entire timeline. Now that's a lot of hooey, I guess, but I think with Reverend Jay, specific issues that he went through in his life, maybe you can see how it can actually be truth and be put together. I'll turn it over to Reverend Jay now.
Well, it's like him, I started in at 6. Parents relocated to a new town, and my brother and I were left alone. I was 6, he was 5, and my grandmother, who died 3 months after I was born, showed up one night to keep me company because I was afraid about being home alone with my brother. And my parents would have no part of that because they said if I told anybody, they'd have me be put in the funny farm, state hospital. But from that moment on, she opened the door. Every time I had a problem, Grandma would go and find a spirit person that knew the answers, and they would give me the answers of how to deal with this and how to deal with that. And we took on bullies in the playground. And after a while, people would come to me and they said, well, how did you know what to do with this bully? He didn't hit you. And I said, no. I listened to what they told me, and we just made the bully feel like this wasn't anything successful for him, so he just left all the kids alone. I could not believe, as I was going through school, how things were working for me. I just asked for help, and they would be there to help me. It was like having a tutor all the time. And when I got into high school, because of things that I wanted to become more empowered with, rather than just rote memory stuff, I used to be sent to the principal's office, and the principal realized that I had something, but he didn't understand what. So we worked up as a team. We put together a newspaper for this high school. And in the first year we got honorable mention. The second year we got the first paper in the state of Pennsylvania. And we got other ads and things done. And after a while, even the teachers would ask for suggestions. And I would come up with these activities or suggestions of how to make it easier or how we can do it better or whatever. And the principal didn't understand where I'm getting this from, and neither did I. After a while, I forgot. All I kept saying is, this is the way I think it should happen. This is the way I think it should happen. I didn't like living in Pennsylvania longer, so I ran off, joined the Navy, and that was a bummer. But in the Navy, it's like they pull you into places. I met an educational therapist, and he said, hey, you need to go off to college and meet people like you. And I said, like me? Yeah, you're not like us, so you have to go somewhere, meet some people that play hunches. And he looked at me and he burned some tests. He said, you know, you could start in the second semester sophomore year. You don't have to do the freshman year and the first semester sophomore year because you already know the stuff. But I did it anyway. And when I'd be taking exams, I would look at a student, and all of a sudden the student would be thinking about the answers to the questions, and I'm getting their thoughts and I'm writing them down. And I said to the university, my cheating, I said, you will never need this information, but you need to pass the subjects. And it was bizarre how answers just keep coming and coming. And one instructor looked at me and he says, I don't know where you're getting all this. And I said, I don't know. He gave me a math test and I couldn't figure it out, so I did it 3 different ways. And I finally come up by adding the answer to problem 2 and problem 4 would come up with the right answer. And I circled, this is the right answer. He said he spent 3 hours trying to figure out how I knew that was the right answer and working my problem through, how did I get to there? But he said, for some reason, you seem to find a way to get there with the math and all this other stuff. But I was listening. And one day my landlady said, I want you to come with me to go to a church service, and I said, I'm not a religious person. No, I don't want to do this. So she conned me into going just this one time. We walked in this building, and it was a spiritualist church. I don't know what that means. And walked in, and my grandmother, who I loved immensely, that died when I was 20, and now I'm 26, 6 years ago, and she built up in front of me in full living color. And I nudged my landlady and I said, look at her. And she said, look at what? Only I saw her. And we went and sat down, and a person got up in the from the staff on that church, and they said, your grandmother, Hyla, greeted you at the door. And I'm looking at this woman, I'm thinking, how did she know that? And her husband, Ori, was standing next to her. Then another person gets up and says, your grandma Wilhelmina's over here, and Henry, her husband, is standing here. And Archie, that drowned in the Erie Canal, and I'm looking at him, and I don't know these people, but how are they getting all this information? And finally, the minister gets up and he said, you know what? In 10 years, you'll be standing in this pulpit. And I thought, oh, here's one sniffed and glue. How could she predicting that far? When I walked out of there, I scratched my head, and I couldn't deny what they said. So I started a whole journey of understanding the whole metaphysical world and how to use it more appropriately. And what was the most interesting thing with, we have a library up in Erie County in Buffalo, New York, where the wealthy class took all the publications in the late 80s, 90s, 1880s, when spiritualism was on a big movement and there was a lot of printed material, and they made up a special unit in the library. So I went there, did all the research and studying all of this phenomenon and how it really worked. And one day one of the things is, if you ask the question, show me, I'll do my part. But the question is, you got to do your part. One day someone was talking about levitation and all of that, and I thought, oh, seeing is believing. And all of a sudden the voice said, would you do your part? And I said, yes. Show me. And a gentleman came up that was sitting in that church, and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, I hear you want to see levitation. And I hadn't even talked to him. And I said, yes, it's possible. So he picked me up, and they went over to this house, and they showed me how they levitated a table, and the trumpets flew around the room, and the guitars played against the ceiling, and spirits were talking to you through trumpets, and it was a phenomenal evening. There was no windows, just a door, it was a one room, and all of this stuff was taking place. I couldn't deny it, so it even sparked my attention more. But I found a way that really worked for me was, I would ask for a teacher to show me how to do the assignment. When I worked for the government, all of a sudden they started giving me all kinds of interesting assignments that nobody ever worked on before. Bingo, I'm doing it. And I let my boss take the bows for having the work done perfectly, but I was learning how to do it. And they kept telling me, and after a while, I was doing all special programs, and even the people would come and work for me to help me demonstrate the things that I was learning from the spirit world. And life becomes an adventure. It's like you seem to know ahead of time. But it isn't saying, God, you do it, or the angels do it, or somebody else does it. I want to do it. Teach me. Show me. And I'll do my part. But you can't interfere with my personal life, because I'm on my own journey. But I need things to complement it to be successful. So it kind of fills in what Dick's talking about, is you ask for it, they give you the answers. but you have to do it, and they can get into your timeline. I see things in the future ahead of time, and it always blows me away when I walk into the room and I know what the people are gonna say, what's gonna go on, and I'm already prepared for it. And it makes this journey exciting. It gives value, because the person in the spirit world are kept current with the things that are going on in the earth, because we're working together as a team. Because when they come back in a physical body, they have that knowledge in their DNA to prepare for whatever journey they're working on. This is I keep saying, a playground to try out information. And it works for you if you, one, put the energy to it, because they need physical energy there. So when I ask for a problem or solution, I think of Mother Earth's energy that they need to help me with the answer, and then whatever they tell me, I just do it and see how it happens. I want to kind of dump it back on Dick and see if he can give you a few more critical answers to how this thing works.
Well, thank you, Reverend Jay. I was thinking while you were talking about the year after I graduated from the Star Power class. In that year, we have readings on Wednesday evenings. And in a couple of those readings at different times throughout the year, I picked up as a guide, and I'll tell you my reflection on this when I get to that point. I picked up a friend that I worked with in a large computer company in Alaska, and he passed away some 10, 15 years ago. He was a senior engineer, and he showed up at a reading. And within the next month, a very psychic friend that I used to have and live in Alaska, he passed away down here, but he showed up in a reading. And at that time, I was not making a logical sense of these two guys wanting to be guides, because I looked up to them. They had the answers when I needed them when they were alive, and so I couldn't see why they needed to be a guide for me. I should be a guide for them, running around getting answers when the time comes. And then that's when the idea that this is the cusp. This is changing from the old ways, when we just used to ask a guide and work out a problem, to a different type of dynamic now. Jay and I and the rest of you are guides for the people that are coming to us for help now from the fourth dimension, basically, from the invisible dimension. When they passed on, they had some unresolved issues, and now we, with the knowledge we have, as we remember the things we've forgotten, are able to help them out and progress and get over the hurdle of karma in their lives. And it's a good feeling. It makes sense to me, and I like being of help. My whole life I like repairing things, fixing things, and the fact that they have come and asked me for help makes me feel good. They see my value, and now I understand the things that I learned from them and what it was setting me up for in this particular time in our history. I think I ran that one down. Do you have anything you want to add to that, or a different way of looking at it possibly?
When you were talking, I was thinking about a woman brought her young son, an 18-year-old, to see me here. And he comes in and he was disappointed with life, and he was complaining and whatever. And I said to him, what's the problem? He says, I'm just bored and I don't know what to do. And I looked at his mother and I said, you know, it'll be about 4 years before he shifts into gear. This time is just to be here and gleaning whatever he wants to glean or get anything out of his system or explore anything he needs to explore. But he isn't going to want education, or he doesn't want to put in gear and start his quest for being more. And after we talked for a while, he looked at me and he said, I think, no. He said, Mom, let's go. So they took off. And she called me back and she said, I don't know, but there's a change going on in him. And she called me back after 4 years and she said, he's enrolled at a university, he's taken the strongest courses possible, he is on fire. And I suggested to him again about coming and seeing you, and you said this would happen at this age. And he said, Mom, I'm too busy trying to get caught up. And he attracted people from the spirit world, was helping him get caught up. He needed that dead time ahead of time to get in tune with them. And because we planted enough seeds, he was taking that 4 years to get his mysterious spiritual help. So when he started in on his goal of life, it'd be already up and running. And he didn't have to unlearn any poor habits of work, schooling, or stuff like that, or resentment of going to school for those 4 years. Just go out and do what you need to do and but we planted the seed so it keeps working. So when you come sometimes to a reader and he says, I see this in your future, you can either do something with it, because my people see your people and they're going to start working with it if you want it. We're not here alone. And when I get really upset from time to time when people say, well, I tell God all the things I need to get done.
Mm-hmm.
But the question here is, God already knows how to do it. So it's up to you. You're part of the future, because one day you'll be over in the spirit world helping people on the earth plane to be successful, and you'll be working with God in helping them evolving, causing this whole culture to move on. Look what's going on today. We have people with real high ideas, and we still have the skulligans in there burning down things, tearing up things, and we need to get them caught up with the rest of us. And the only way we can do it is pulling in the energy and keeping it on the energy on the earth for the right action, for the highest and greatest good for everyone. If we can keep doing that and working with these people that we cannot see, and not depending on God doing it or some angel doing it, we need to do it. We need to demonstrate it. And this is why we keep, like Dick was talking about, they were once our teachers in the physical world, and now they're our helpers from the spirit world, helping us make the journey for where we're going. One day we're going to be in that position, helping people that helped us, in this continuous evolution will keep on growing. That's why the DNA is important, because it keeps us connected with a history of this physical form. Our soul is connected to the spiritual world. And so we use both of these, physical world to demonstrate thoughts and ideas making words flesh. What does it feel like? What does it look like? How does it work? As a team, this is how we make things happen. But we just can't sit back and say, well, Spirit, you do it. Or Dick, you do it. Well, what am I going to learn out of this? What's my part? Why did I come here? We all come with an agenda, and we need to get on with our work. most of you know, I'm 90, and I'm hoping to get 10 more years in because I see some pieces that I still haven't gotten done yet. And I've been working on this project since I've been 6 years old. And it's been a fantastic journey, seeing people growing, people taking the information and running with it. But it's all like, if we take it as a game instead of punishment, or why is this happening to me? Because you need to have solutions to problems. Evolution. How can we do it better? I want to flip it back to Dick and see how he can get them to tell him how to do it better.
Well, pay attention.
Yes.
That's a short, meaningful statement, though. Back probably in the 1990s, I lived out in the country. I had a little pickup, and I used to drive a little lead-footed. And in the country, there were a lot of snaky type roads. I'd jumped in my pickup one day, and I was going to go into town. That's about 12, 14-mile drive. And I'm lead-footing, and I'm probably about 35 miles an hour, getting ready to go into a blind right curve. And Spirit totally took my sight away. I couldn't see anything but this little girl laying on the yellow line in the middle of the highway. And I just hit the brake. I didn't solid lock anything, but I really slowed down. And I'll be darned if another 10 seconds as I got around that corner, there's a farmer out there working on his fence in the, along the road, and his granddaughter's laying in the middle of the highway, basically having a fit. Well, that really will wake you up. And as I look back on that thing, on that particular instance, several times, and I'm just wondering, there's probably no way I could figure this out now, but I'm just wondering, what did that little girl, what has she done for humanity in the last 20 years? Because her life didn't end in that 20 seconds of my, let's get on the gas, go fast. Spirit just takes your sight away, and there's what you see, and if you pay attention, you stop. I did. I slowed down a whole lot anyway. And went around her, honked the horn. I gotta believe that she's doing something very important for us. And another thing you need to know is when you do these things, you don't have to follow, you don't have to learn anything about the person from it. You just know that you did what Spirit wanted you to do so that the timeline goes on in the direction it's supposed to go, and everybody comes out ahead.
I think the major thing is you're listening, and
Yes.
you did something about it.
Well, they made sure I couldn't not listen.
You know, I have seen people who said, I got the message, I got the to do, not to do that, and I didn't pay attention. I said, well, how many times you gotta get a wake-up call?
Yeah.
I've been in blizzards where you couldn't even see beyond your headlights, driving 15 miles an hour on a thruway, and they said, give it the gas, don't take it off. And I'm always practicing with them. Am I listening? And I'll tell you one that was like yours. I was on an errand, and I'm driving down Delaware Avenue in Buffalo, and I'm crossing over into Kenmore, and if you go 35 miles an hour, you can make every light in Kenmore on this main street without a problem. But you have to do just 35. And I was doing 35, there's 2 lanes going both directions, plus parked car. And all of a sudden, the universe took a picture and had me look over to the side, and I saw a church on the corner, and then I saw this kid standing about 50 feet up from the street, looking at the signal light, looking at the cars that are parked along, and along the way, and I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden I see the light change for me to get there going. I can keep going 35 miles an hour and I get through this. And This kid starts through the parked car and he's gonna cut across the street. I put my hands on both the steering wheel and both feet on the brake, and I screamed out, "No!" And the car come to a dead stop. It didn't, going 35 miles an hour, didn't even move. It just, like you nailed it. And when we nailed it, the kid face was against the passenger window, looking at me with his hands up on the glass. And I'm looking at him and I think, God, if I'd have moved an inch, I would have spun him around and he would have got hurt. I quickly jumped out of my car and I run around, and he looked at me and where did I come from? And he just run across the street like a dog that was scared. And the person in the car that was waiting for the light to turn looked at me and he said, "How did you make it stop on a dime?" I said, I wasn't going to explain to him. I said, "I don't know." And I went back and got in my car and drove on. But from that point on, it was another learning lesson. I was driving and I was pretty concerned about making all the lights and getting there on time. And from now on, when they said, "Slow down," I don't care where I'm going, I'm going to slow down. I don't know if that kid had a chance. If I had not, he would have hit the car, spun around, who would know what happened? But a lot of times accidents were prevented because you heard the thought, slow down, stop, do whatever. And that's what we were talking about today. We all have the ability to hear God's Spirit's workers helping us do our journey, why we are here, and help them to keep current in the evolution of knowledge and wisdom, and make it possible for all of us to live in a place where we grow together, complement each other, and the most important thing of all, being grateful that they're there, because if we love each other, we'll show each other the way to master the game of unconditional love for everyone and their gifts that they brought with them, and demonstrate for us to have a life where we can see knowledge in a material way and how it benefits all of us. Now I give it back to Dick for the hymn.
Well, this Sunday get-together with Reverend Jay and myself, we're planning on doing this the last Sunday of every month for the rest of the year. It's whenever they finally turn us loose and let us go back to church normally, we'll just try doing the same thing in front of the congregation. But for the time being, if you have any specific questions that have to do with guides and spirit world and how we tend to work together, email it to Home Center
2 at Comcast.net.
Home Center 2
Yeah.
at Comcast.net. There you go.
Arms around the world, around each other. Arms around the world, sisters and brothers. Arms around the world and we discover. Arms around the world, there